the 25th of August, which means September will be here soon. Craig Calcaterra, NBC Sports, Major League Baseball writer. You can, of course, hear Craig on the NBC Sports Radio and the NBC Sports Radio app. And, Craig, we got about a month of the baseball season left here, and we've got some interesting races. I do want to get a couple quick opinions locally here because the Phillies a lot of people around here wondering if the month of September is going to be an ugly month. Is this a team that has hit the wall, running out of gas? You got a lot of young pitchers kind of coming up lame. Eflin out for the year. Thompson really struggling. We know Nola's done for the year. Are you looking at a team here that could have an ugly September as that calendar's ready to flip?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, certainly the Eflin thing, but I mean, Thompson he just got shelled the other night, I think, and it's been really bad seeing that. But we knew this was going to happen. Like, these young arms just aren't used to these full seasons. The grind with Major League Baseball. This is the year they take it on the chin, and they've done a better job taking it than I think a lot of people thought they would. They're not going to lose 100 games, and that's a victory. I know that sounds dubious, but it's still a victory for a team that was dismantling itself last year, and many people thought would be the worst team in baseball this year. They're not even the worst team in their division. That's a good thing.
No, and one of the things I wanted to follow up with it is, with the year that they had, what should people be thinking about this team entering next year? I asked a poll question yesterday. What season are you looking forward to the most? Eagles, Flyers, Sixers, or next year's, Philly? I think the spring training is going to be very interesting. Do you think expectations for them next year have now changed because of what they were able to do this year?
Well, they shouldn't. I mean, it's always going to be a multi-year, multi-step process when you're as bad as the Phillies got to. What I think a reasonable thing for next year is to see improvement with the pitching, because now everybody's got a year under their belt. And then the point of next year is to find out, okay, who is going to be a reliable offensive contributor to this team going forward? I mean, when your best offensive player for most of the year, Herrera, is obviously in the doghouse and not in the future plans of the team, that's a huge question mark. When Franco, who everybody thinks was going to be an MVP type, which is silly, I mean, he's still a young kid, struggles a little bit, people, are going to get worried. Next year is the year where you're going to find out who stays and who goes offensively. Is Tommy Joseph the future? Probably. Who else is going to emerge? Are they going to make moves this winter to add a projectable bat? Next year's the offense. This year was the pitching. You just hope you don't get worse in the pitching next year.
Yeah, we'll see how those young pitchers hold up this offseason. Let's look at some of the races with Craig Calcaterra as we get ready to head to the month of September here. Down the stretch they come. In that American League East, we got three teams within a game here. Toronto leads the way. Boston, Baltimore. How do you see that one shaping up as we hit the final month almost?
I think that Toronto and Boston are just fundamentally better teams than the Orioles. Give Buck Showalter all kinds of credit for doing what he's done. There's certainly a lot of talent there, but you look at run differentials on these teams and you realize that Baltimore, as it always does, is kind of winning close games and losing close games. Whereas when Toronto and Boston are on, they can be a dominant couple of teams. I mean, they've got amazing offenses. I think that it's a very good chance all three of those teams make the playoffs because no one else seems to want to put it into another gear for the wild card. But I definitely think Baltimore is sort of a second tier behind Toronto and Boston, and I think that there's going to be some separation put between those guys in the month of September.
They just lost Tillman, too, their top pitcher, so that's going to be a struggle for Baltimore. Kansas City was really coming on. They were the hot team to write about a week ago, but they're 7.5 back in the division. Cleveland at the top. Is this Cleveland? Does Kansas City factor at all? And I'm not even mentioning Detroit, who's just 5.5 back. But will that division be interesting?
I don't think the division gets interesting. I think it's an open question of whether Detroit and Kansas City move a little more forward in the wild card race. But Cleveland is a very, very good team. I know they just came off a tough series in Oakland, scored 3 runs in 3 games, but heck, they won one of those because they've got amazing pitching. And they're going to now play Texas. That's going to be a very interesting series. That could be an ALCS preview, but don't sleep on the Indians. They are definitely a real deal here. I don't think they're going to get challenged at all. I think to the extent Kansas City factors in anything, it's going to be playing spoiler.
We think that Texas will win the West. Seattle, Houston, will they be a factor in the wild card out there? Do you like either one of those two to make? I mean, Houston, it looked like they were, having a kind of a flop year. Then they turned it on a little bit. Now they're just kind of stuck in the middle here, 4.5 back. What's the AL wild card look like to you?
Yeah, they had a nice little road trip. I'll give them that. They haven't packed it in yet. But, I still think Baltimore, Boston, Toronto, the two teams that don't win that division look a little bit better right now. I think Detroit has a decent chance of getting that conversation. Seattle's been just a mystery team this year. There have been times where they've looked unbeatable, times when they've just looked terrible. They're just as far back in the wild card as Detroit is at 3. But then you start getting into them in Houston, and you got a lot of teams to climb over. You've got to climb over 2, 3, 4 teams to get into that. And sometimes that's harder to do than it is simply to make up a number of games, because you can be really, really hot. The guys at the top can be really, really cold, and it doesn't help you a bit. So definitely that's the cutoff is Houston, but I think they've got a hard go of it.
Good stuff. Craig Calcaterra is with us, NBC Sports Radio, the 24/7 live Sports Talk Radio Network, where you can listen to at NBCSportsRadio.com and download the NBC Sports Radio mobile app today. Let's shift to the senior circuit over there, and the Nationals 7 games up on the Marlins, who've had some injuries. The Mets had the pitching problems. Do you look at Washington running away in the East?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, the Marlins' big move was trading for Jeff Francoeur. Hey, that's not really going to move the needle for you. Ichiro is not an everyday player anymore. Losing Stanton was huge. There's just no way that either the Marlins or the Mets are going to catch those Nationals. And, Steven Strasburg's on the disabled list, sure. Bryce Harper's been struggling this year, sure. But that's a very comfortable lead and a very talented team there in Washington.
Is the rest of the National League all wild cards? I mean, the West is a 3-game, separation between the Giants and the Dodgers. But you would think one of those teams, the loser, would be the wild card. It seems that second wild card spot is going to be a very interesting race where you've got St. Louis, the Marlins, the Pirates, and the Mets all within 5 games.
Although, I don't even know if the first wild card is a sure bet. I mean, the Giants have just had a miserable second half. They're only, I think, 2 games up over the Marlins.
Yep.
in the wild card race. They're only a half game up on the Cardinals. And interesting race there. You can't rule out Pittsburgh. The Mets, I think they've had too many injuries. They're 4.5 back in the wild card right now, but Pittsburgh, I think, could definitely they've stayed in the conversation all year despite struggles from so many of their contributors. The Marlins are close. Cardinals, Giants, Dodgers, anybody there, I think, could win the wild card. It just seems to be a pretty big toss-up, and then you have a really big fall-off after the Mets. I think that's probably a 4-team conversation there.
Yeah, these wild card races, the Major League Baseball, if you don't like the wild cards or even don't like the second wild card, it has certainly added something because the races would not be as strong this year without these wild card races.
Yeah, we've only got 2 divisions right now that are even remotely close. And, we would just be packing it in talking about, the other divisions. And I'm not a huge fan of it. I don't mind it during the season. I think once you get to the playoffs and you've got a one-and-done game, that just really stinks. It does keep it interesting. You and I would not be talking about playoff races right now, pretty much, if it wasn't for that. So,
no, Craig, you brought up.
It makes it interesting.
You brought up the point about, and we'll probably talk about this as we get closer to the. I hate that one-gamer. I mean, baseball's all predicated on series, and then for your biggest moment, you make it a one-gamer. I think that's horrible.
Oh, yeah. One off day, one bad pitch, one dumb error, and 8 months of work is down the drain. You're always going to have an element of that with the playoffs because, even a 3 and a 5 game or a 7-game series is short. But one game just means nothing in baseball, but all of a sudden it means everything. That's just too much of a tone shift for me.
Me too, Craig Calcaterra. Phillies pitcher David Hernandez criticized Tim Tebow for trying to work out. Now, the Phillies are going to be one of the teams, and I guess all these teams are kind of just intrigued. But do you have a problem? I know we talked about Tebow and kind of think he's an extreme long shot, but do you have a problem doing what he's doing?
I don't have a theoretical problem with it. It bugs me a little bit that there are guys who either didn't get drafted or guys on, independent league teams who have been working their butts off in baseball that can't just call a press conference and all of a sudden have, 20 scouts show up and watch you and get covered by ESPN and stuff. I think that there are a lot of guys that could maybe turn some heads in one tryout and even get a look, at the professional affiliated level that Tebow's going to get that they never would have gotten just because of who he is. And that irks me a little bit. But, it's no harm. The guy's either going to be able to play or he's not. I have this feeling he's not. And, if my team was sending a scout there, it wouldn't bug me very much. Hey, let the scout get a free trip to Los Angeles. He could have fun. Get a nice dinner out of it.
Craig Calcaterra, NBC Sports Radio, here on the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN, as the Phillies have the day off. They'll take on the Mets starting tomorrow night. Thank you, Craig.
Thank you very much.